This week on Post Call, my favorite interview that I've ever done on the show, Dr. Lynsey Daniels, one of the former orphan residents at Hahnemann University Hospital, joins me to talk about the final days. She wrote a eulogy to Hahnemann University Hospital, so we'll talk all about that. Emi takes the quiz. She's true to form. It's kind of weird. She's stuck at 80%. And we are going to talk about what is in everyone's poo. It's kind of bad. We don't love it. Everything. The Amazon is on fire. There's a hurricane, Emi. Things are getting out of control.
They are getting out of control,
No
yes.
response there. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll do it all myself.
Yep.
So
how's things back in Philly, Nick?
Football starts tomorrow in the United States of America. American National Football League football starts. I'm so excited. So my girlfriend put me in charge of drafting her fantasy team. I named her team after a quarterback for the Lions, Matthew Stafford. I named her team Staffordococcus.
Okay.
You like that? That's a little pun right there, Emi.
Got it.
I feel like you didn't get the joke, but we'll work on that. We'll get you a fantasy team one of these days.
Thank you.
All right, so let's take the quiz. You just can't help yourself. You are always stuck at 80%. You know, it is what it is. All right, let's do this. Question number 1. Between 2004 and 2014, transplant centers in the U.S. discarded approximately what percentage of 156,000 deceased donor kidneys recovered? Is it A, 9%, B, 18%, or C, 36%? All of those are exponential. Emi, I learned that in school.
Yeah. I'm going with B, 18%. I read this somewhere.
You read this, that means you probably read it at mdh.com because that is correct. That seems a little high to me. You should probably look into that if you want to read more about why it's 18%. You can click the link in the podcast notes. Question number 2. In a cross-sectional study of former professional football players in the U.S., concussion symptoms were associated with indicators of which of the following? A, high testosterone levels, B, low testosterone levels, C, erectile dysfunction, D, A and C. So one option is high testosterone and ED, and another option is B and C, which is low testosterone and ED.
Yeah, it's not just, brain injuries and CTE, but it is low testosterone and erectile dysfunction. Oh, what? It's just...
No, this is where it gets really interesting. I know this because I'm into sports, as we know. It's high testosterone. People think that CTE is associated with kind of aggressive
yes,
behavior.
I remember this because they took a lot of testosterone.
Yeah, and there's there's a lot of indications of these former players. It happens a lot in Europe with professional soccer players. There have been instances of them becoming abusive or aggressive towards people that they have normally been pretty good with, and they think that this is, that's probably associated. So we're kind of getting around the corner on that research, and I think we're going to find out definitively that banging your head against anything, whether it be a ball or another person, for years is probably bad.
Mm-hmm.
Question number 3. True or false? Clinicians should recommend against following local vaccine standards and receiving the yearly influenza vaccine for patients with MS. This is according to an American Academy of Neurology practice guideline. True or false?
I'm going to say false.
False. Let's see.
I haven't heard that one.
Congratulations. Let's read about this one because I haven't heard this either. Patients with multiple sclerosis should follow local vaccine standards and receive the yearly influenza vaccine unless there are specific contraindications such as active treatment with immunosuppressive or immunomodulating agents. This is a new guideline. Interesting. So vaccinations are good. Crazy.
Yep, I'm for it.
So you got to get this one right? Because you got to get the next two right.
Ooh,
Question number 4.
feeling the pressure.
Another true or false. They're the worst kind. Findings from a study of nearly 500,000 middle-aged individuals in Britain established that there is a single genetic determinant associated with same-sex sexual behavior. True or false?
Yeah, this was an interesting study that said there's both a genetic and a social component, but I think it was more than one gene, so we're saying false.
Correct. The way you explained that right there, I was like, no, Emi, you know the answer to this. No. And then you like, oh, no,
Just
more than
one
one
gene. Yeah.
Caveat, slip that in there to try to trip you up on the true or false question. But you were wise to it. Final question, true or false, another one. Man, those are so hard. The FDA issued a drug safety communication on August 28 regarding the use of 3 Hep C medicines due to rare cases of worsening liver function or liver failure. True or false? Drug safety communication.
I know this one. Yeah, 63 patients or 69, not a lot, had worsening decompensation on their Hep C meds. So that is true.
Congratulations, you are above average, but not excellent once again.
Woohoo! 80 Emi.
80 Emi.
I'll take it.
Is back. So, as I mentioned in the intro, Lynsey Daniels, Dr. Lynsey Daniels, is a PGY3 resident. Her interview is coming up later. She wrote a eulogy to Hahnemann University Hospital, and Emi and I will talk about that in a little bit. But I wanted to talk about something that was alarming. Every time we do these, we kind of communicate back and forth, and we say, hey, check this out, hey, check that out. And Emi had something that indicated that people from all over the world had microplastic in their stool. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, it was an interesting article, and kudos to the people who did a fairly easy study. They found 8 people willing to take a weekly journal of everything they ate and investigate their stool specimens. All specimens had microplastics. Yeah.
All of them.
So all of them. Be it, the film on the sandwich pack you bought, or just being in contact with plastics, or maybe it being in the food. Because we talk a lot about, what about the chemicals in plastics leaching into our water? But in reality, we're eating bits of plastic, through the fish. Who really knows? But this just opens up research that more needs to be done.
Right. It's to me, I'm glad that this is happening on a place. This is, of course, a Medscape article who is owned by the same parent company that owns the brand MD Edge, including this podcast. The Medscape article is available in the show notes. I'm glad that this is happening there because there are so many different ways to think about it. One way for me is that refrigeration and all these things have allowed mass production of food. And so, of course, you get like a sandwich wrapper, like you said, like a lot of different ways that this can happen. But we need to figure out, like, what are the long-term effects, which they mentioned in the article. What are the effects? What's going to happen? I wish we got to get our old pal Shani Dio back on the podcast. She loves talking about farts and poo, so this would be right up her alley.
Yeah. And I just saw this part: 20 microplastic particles per 10 grams of stool on average.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
And that means that it wasn't a one-time meal thing, right? Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's more than just one meal. That is happening consistently throughout the diet of everybody around the world. That is the other caveat. And 8 people, an N of 8 is not super crazy, but that, for the fact that they're everywhere, is really interesting.
Yeah. Japan, Russia, Netherlands, UK, Italy, Poland, Finland, Austria.
So if you want to read about plastic in your poo, because it's probably in all of our poo, according to this trial, it says everybody. So it really, it lends itself to larger stuff. We're finding out air quality stuff from Eastern Asia, where you are now, even into the Salt Lake Valley, where the Amazon is on fire, the lung of the world. There are Category 5 hurricanes every year when it used to be rare. Spain is getting hurricanes. They're not a political podcast, climate change, but there are health impacts, and we have a lot of stuff at MD Edge and everywhere. And we're going to continue that conversation because we need to talk about how it impacts patients and the people who treat them, like Emi, who is in a place that doesn't have super great air quality.
Yeah. All important things for us to think about as physicians.
Okay, so we're in September now, which is Physician Suicide Awareness Day. The second annual one is coming up. Suicide Prevention Week is in a couple weeks, and this is sort of Suicide Prevention Month. And it leads me to correct myself. In an interview last week, I said victim of suicide, and I know better than that. It's not victim of suicide, but died by suicide. So we got to correct myself. Like, don't love the fact that I slipped up on that. I try very hard to keep that accurate. So my transition that I'm getting to is we're looking at mental health, a review of medical boards. This is from Pamela Wibble, MD. She is a leader in physician suicide awareness and prevention. This is really interesting. I think that a lot of states, there's obviously a bureaucratic side of this and there's a geographic side of this, and see how people are doing state by state in healthcare with regard to their mental health.
Yeah, this was an interesting piece, and we should have Dr. Whibble on the show.
Would love her. Yes, that would be.
If we haven't thought that already.
Get that going, yeah.
Yeah, she's a really big advocate for physician well-being and our mental health, and in particular, there is a lot of suicide that we need to kind of figure out what contributes and how can we help. And the state board process often asks very invasive questions about mental health and our ability to practice medicine, which actually puts in sometimes a lot more stress on people who've experienced these diseases. And there are multiple kind of things in this piece, hearing about physicians who drive, an hour or two away to go to another place so that people can't see their records and to kind of hide from the boards, feel very anxious.
Yeah, I've heard of people running games where your friend or your spouse or your significant other will book an appointment with a psychiatrist or with a practice, and then you'll go together, and then the person will leave so that the physician can receive the care, but there's no documentation that that's what happened. And that kind of roundabout stuff, it's ripe with stigma. It's just crazy.
Oh my gosh. That's bizarre. That's so unfortunate that, physicians trying to seek help will be penalized like this.
Right.
So she actually goes through each state and gives them kind of a grade for grade A, B, C, D, and F for how they do in this.
Yeah, and we're going to
breaks it down to find your state.
Yeah, I want to name them all just because everybody has state pride. The thing that really caught my eye is you're looking at the states that got A's. There are 13 of them, and they have nothing in common as a group. Nothing. Some of them are super sparsely populated. States that got an A are Wyoming and Nevada, and Nevada is essentially the moon in certain places in central Nevada, but also getting an A grade were New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and Connecticut, the most densely populated area in the Western Hemisphere. So I feel like, and the grade A is on whether or not there were mental health questions or two straightforward current impairment questions that do not mention mental health. So the ones that got A's: Connecticut, Hawaii, Indiana, Kentucky, New Jersey, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nevada, New York, Pennsylvania, Wyoming. The fact that they have nothing in common to me kind of points to this being a systemic bureaucratic problem, because Wyoming does not have anything in common with Massachusetts.
Yeah, well, they all just had a legislative board that decided to, maybe tackle this problem or to be above it. So any state can get there is the thing.
Right. So
you just need to, if you see your state on the naughty list, just help advocate for mental health and wellness.
Let's see who is on the naughty list. 7 states on the naughty list: Alabama, Alaska, Delaware, Florida, Mississippi, Rhode Island, and the state of Washington. I changed my mind. I'm not going to read all the states, but you can find out more. The states that, as the states do worse, there are more written about them. So if your state is, a C or lower, there will be quite a bit to read about. The link for that will be in the podcast notes. But man, Pamela Moole will do a really great job. This is a very depthy, well-written piece, and it just it makes you sad. Sometimes it makes me feel like the battle is a little bit more uphill than I thought, but I'm glad this exists, and I'm glad we're talking about it.
Yeah, and it's good to see kind of other people's great job putting in excerpts from other people to really see what it's like for these people.
Yeah, the anecdotal, that's great. That's great writing. That's great storytelling. So definitely recommend checking that out. We have a new logo. If you haven't noticed, it is for suicide prevention. We are going to be participating in the conversation with resources and links. There will be a special masterclass lecture from our sister show, the MD Edge Psychcast, about physician suicide. There will be places to donate. There will be questionnaires to take, and there will be scholarships that the Sharp Index, where a future guest is going to be handing out. And we'll link to all of that. It's coming up all this month on Post Call Podcast. And I'd like to thank our designer, Luis, for getting this new logo out for suicide prevention. Okay, so let's talk about the interview. We've been covering this all summer because we live in Philadelphia and because it's just so shocking. It really grabbed the attention of everyone in healthcare, and that was the closure of Hahnemann University Hospital. And Dr. Lynsey Daniels coming on the program in just a minute. She wrote a eulogy for a hospital.
Yeah, and I loved it. It was it's an article on our WHYY, our kind of NPR network, and she just kind of goes through what her experience has been like and what it means to see this monolithic hospital that was her life and her patient's life closing. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was really beautiful and really well written. I will give you a spoiler. She wrote that while she was coming back from a wedding at an airport, while she was sort of nostalgia tipsy and was feeling emotional. She wrote that beautiful piece of work on her phone, and then she emailed it with like, publish it or don't. And I kind of love that this kind of happened together. She got her emotion out. It was a bit of closure for her. So, and I like I said, we've been doing this podcast for about a year now. Best interview, in my opinion, that we've ever done.
Yeah. Well, she wrote that on her phone. Oh my gosh. You should see the stuff I write on my phone.
Yeah. Most of my stuff they're the grocery lists. I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I screw those up all the time.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So, I'm excited for the interview.
Yeah.
This will be great.
It's one of the best ones we've ever done. I really appreciate it. So, Emi, I hope you're cooling off. Right now, I have this weird problem in my apartment. It's 66 degrees and I'm just trying to warm up. But how's Cambodia?
Oh gosh. Oh. Yeah, I have my AC on, not too high, but right. We're hanging in there.
I got a text from you. Raining. You texted me. I got a notification on my computer that says you have unstable internet connection, but Emi's doing just fine. She's doing well enough.
Yeah, thank you, internet.
Joke's on you.
All over the world.
All right, coming up next, our interview with Dr. Lynsey Daniels. Emi, you stay cool in Cambodia. To Dr. Lynsey Daniels, who wrote a eulogy for a hospital, the first one that I've ever personally read. You were a surgical resident at Hahnemann University Hospital, and you wrote this beautiful essay at WHYY, and I had the opportunity to talk with you before we recorded, and I found out that it was one of those things that you do in a very inebriated, nostalgic situation in an airport. So why don't you talk to me about what motivated you to write it and what's in the piece?
Sure. So I was fortunate to have trained at Hahnemann as a medical student because I was at Drexel. So I had 2 years of clinical experience there, and then I had 2 years of clinical experience as a resident and a year of research there as well. So I'd been there for a good amount of time, and I anticipated being there for even longer. And I'd kind of settled into that routine. And so the news about the hospital closing was very abrupt.
Yeah. So I don't want to cut you off there. I want to just like jump in and ask something. Yeah. This is what I'm really curious about. We'll get back to that.
Oh, sure.
But I wanted to know, like, everyone in Philly has always told me that it's going to close. And the rumors were kind of hearsay. And then it was also like a way like, oh, everyone's making fun of Hahnemann. But then I suspect that at some point it's not just the things that people are saying. It's getting kind of real. When was that?
We all had heard the same rumors. You know, everyone said 20 years ago, they declared bankruptcy. It happened once. Right. There was a time about like May or June. No, I guess like May that the CEO or the owner of the hospital had made some kind of wild statements in the news. And that was the time when everyone said, it's just rumors. This kind of happens every once in a while. It's not a big deal. And we were reassured a lot by like our chairman and other people that, you know, we shouldn't really worry about any of this, and it's kind of above our pay grade to have these concerns. We didn't know until the day they announced they were closing because we found out on the news.
What?
We found out the way that everybody else found out. We didn't get a special email from Drexel. We didn't get a special announcement. It was just on the news that they were closing.
And you were like, I'm pretty hungover. Is this real?
Yeah, we were really kind of taken aback. So there had been an email sent by Drexel that had gone to some of the alumni, the Drexel like medical school alumni, that made mention of the fact that you know, there was this kind of possibility and that Drexel wasn't worried because they had a bunch of other clinical sites, so don't worry about it at all. And when that came out, everyone was like, oh, it's happening. They're closed. Yeah. Like maybe that's going to happen. And, you know, it was probably 12 hours later, it was on the news. So there was like this kind of sort of thing that happened that everyone thought maybe it's really going to happen, but it was like the course of 24 hours it was
That's
official.
Unreal. I heard rumors were, because like when I moved here, like I said, people are like, it's gonna close. Like, okay, yeah, the whole town's going to hell. But I heard from a very reputable source it was going down like in April, and I was like, okay, so this is about to happen. And I think I heard that, and maybe June, someone told me that one of the buildings had already been sold for apartments or something. Like, this is
that's the thing that we don't really, as residents, especially during the match process, you don't really have any knowledge of what the financial status is of a hospital. Obviously, you walk through these places and you can see there are certain hospitals that have a lot more resources than other hospitals. Sure. And you imagine that those are the ones that are doing well and you don't have to worry about it. But you also imagine that a 150-year-old institution is also doing well,
sure, even
if it hasn't been recently renovated and doesn't have a piano in the lobby.
That makes sense.
So even though it looks like, the building is an old building, not a lot of resources.
Yeah, it's
we all thought that
so much has happened there throughout history. It's crazy.
Yeah, we all thought that it was not really a concern. And especially like, for residents, you are reassured that, when you match into these places, no one's going to let you match somewhere that you won't be able to train or that is not equipped to teach you. So we all assumed kind of naively that that's the way that we go.
I find that residents are very naive or green or fresh when you become a resident, and it turns out like, whoa, it's not at all what was implied what was going to happen when I was in med school.
I think that's true. I think the match process itself, which I now believe is probably one of the more fair processes that we have in all of medical education.
The irony of that.
The irony of that. But I think now, you spend, X number of months going from program to program all over the country in some cases, interviewing for a handful of hours and a very quick hospital tour given to you by people at that program who want you to come to that program. And that's it. That's all you get. And suddenly then you have to enter a binding contract where wherever you end up matching, you don't have no say. You're going to end up there for training for however many years your program is. And I think it's you are naive. You go and you hear one presentation by the program director who says, of course, this hospital's been here for 150 years. It's never going to close. You don't have to worry about that. Whether the program director knows that or not is, again, something you're never going to know.
And they would never tell. The program director would be one of the last people to know.
They would be one of the last people to know, and they wouldn't want to tell you anything that's going to lead you to not want to be there. And it's not that anyone is intentionally misleading you, but of course they're trying to sell their program and tell you, like, this place is wonderful. We want you to come here. We want you to train here. And then you make a list, and then you end up there for 5 to 7 years of your life in some cases for some specialties. And that's a lot of time.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that's why when one is reflecting on life, waiting to catch a flight with a couple of adult beverages, you can think like, oh man, this is kind of a bummer. So I guess I've been calling it an obituary. It's actually a eulogy. So you've spent time there and you walked the halls, and now you wrote this piece and sent it to WHYY.
Yeah, I got sad.
Yeah.
And everyone was, it kind of was all the stages of grief. We were in disbelief about this happening. We were in denial. Everyone thought there would be some kind of save at the 11th hour that would.
I still am, I don't know.
There are still articles that are popping up saying, someone from California is going to buy it. Someone from here is going to buy it. Yeah, but at this point, what they're buying is a building only.
Right.
The entity of the hospital is gone. And without the residents, it can't financially survive.
Right.
But yeah, I was sad. And then I got angry about it. And at some point when I realized that I had already orphaned myself into a spot and got a spot elsewhere at Cooper.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
I was relieved and I knew that everything would be okay, but I was still kind of stuck at Hahnemann, and I was going away for my best friend's wedding. And finally had kind of like some downtime where I was not stuck inside the hospital, walking around, filling out paperwork, panicking about what was going to happen, looking at all of these terrible things, what they had kind of just made the building into, which is just a shell of what it used to be. And I just sat down and decided, you know what, I have a few hours on my hands and I should really like get this out because I can't keep being so sad about the fact that I'm not going to train here. There are people who have worked at the hospital for their entire career, or who have trained there and then worked there, and this is the only hospital they've worked at.
Well, yeah, and that's one way to look at it for sure. I look at it as a historical nerd that, like, dude, Joseph Lister was there. Like, he was around there for a little while. He gave presentations about antiseptic.
Yeah.
Right, like that happened right there. And if you drive through Philly, there, Thomas Jefferson University, which came later, it's newer than people think. But Hahnemann is in the middle of the city. You can't drive north or south through Philly without seeing the building. You can touch it from the interstate. Yeah. It's part of one of the oldest cities in the Western Hemisphere. Mm-hmm. It's crazy to me that like it is a pillar of an ancient city. It's crazy.
It is a lot has happened there, and of course I've only seen it for the past 5 years. Yeah, and there are people who have, walked the halls for a very long time and have seen a lot more than me, but for my 5 years, I'm so much in them right now in these like formative training years that the transition from, a green medical student who knows nothing and has never seen a patient to a fourth year medical student who feels ready to start seeing patients and talking to patients and interacting with them to like a resident who is really responsible for patients all happened in that same place. And it was just devastating to see it torn apart and just made into, it's just a commodity now. It's a real estate commodity. They just piled resources in rooms. And
what's crazy, like, I guess probably about a month after it was announced, people started decorating the walls and the windows and stuff. Mm-hmm. You see things like medicine was here and stuff, and you're like, wow, this is pretty somber. I think there's another angle that I like to speculate about because I love dark documentaries and stuff. This is very reminiscent to me anyway of Lehman Brothers Bank going under in 2008. For us, this is a where there's smoke, there's fire. Holy shit, the system is on fire right now. Mm-hmm. This is because everybody in Philly knows that most patients who are uninsured were kind of swept to Hahnemann, and this is indicative. This will not be the only place this happens. There are hospitals already in Ohio that are in very similar situations. This is the first domino, in my opinion, but it is a big domino. So I'm really glad to have somebody that was on the inside here talking about it.
Yeah, I think it is definitely something that points towards kind of a trend. Yeah. I'm certainly not educated enough on the way that the medical system works in our country.
I don't think any of us are. We're all like this system, right?
Yeah, and so I don't really even know, even though I'm like a part of it, I am not educated enough on how it really works. But you could see, and you can see when you walk through certain hospitals, and specifically when you walk through Hahnemann and then you walk through other hospitals, you can see that there's a divide of resources. Yeah. And that there's a certain patient population who ends up at specific hospitals. And if you're lucky, you have a hospital that takes care of both a vulnerable population and a more wealthy population so that you can kind of find a way to stay afloat. But in some cases like Hahnemann, we were almost exclusively taking care of a very, very vulnerable population that, we could not provide all of the resources that we wanted to provide to them.
Yeah, and so the way it works in Philly is there's two brand name institutions that everyone, I don't want to get into the semantics of this, but there are two in the Metro Philly that have brand recognition probably globally in terms of their reach. One specifically that is just a gargantuan institution, not only in medicine, but in life. And then you have another one that's really famous. But if there is so much competition for patients, then if people can select their provider, they start doing that. And it becomes like a shopping mall almost, where like there's a mall that's doing really well, but then there's a mall that, everything's leaving.
Yeah, it's just a strip mall.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is sad. But you are at a new hospital, which in my opinion is one of the more peculiar hospitals that I've ever seen because it does exactly that. The range of patients at Cooper, which is in Camden, New Jersey, is crazy because you have the insanely wealthy South Jersey suburbs of Haddon Township, I guess, I can't forget all the rich
Cherry Hill.
Cherry Hill. There's another one to the north, Morristown. That's what I was thinking, Morristown, right? And then, but also Camden, New Jersey is one of the most violent cities in the continental United States. There is a serious heroin epidemic. There's a drug war. So both populations you see there. I guess I will check in on how your first month is going at Cooper.
Yeah, so first month, don't give me more credit. It has been
weeks,
a week.
right? Yeah.
And it has been wonderful already. I have to say the staff, everyone has been extremely welcoming, and everyone has been really sympathetic about Hahnemann, which is a surprising feeling to get people who also work in a hospital. And I think you realize it becomes like just more than a job or a career. It's like a whole way of life. So they were very understanding that this was a sad thing, very welcoming. And it has been great. And I've seen exactly what you're describing, which is this two ends of a spectrum of patient population. And I think that I'll probably see that more as I'm there longer. But and you have services set up to specifically cater to that vulnerable population and make sure that they actually do get the care that they need, the follow-up that they need. They have the resources. Today I had my first experience with a in-person translator. I've never had that in a hospital.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I wonder how that goes. So I want to talk more about, we'll get back to this is called jumping. This is a gymnastic technique called jumping where there's a major theme and then we go back to it.
Sure.
So we're going to keep going with the eulogy, but you mentioned a term called orphan, and everybody I think in medicine understands what an orphan is when your institution is dead and everybody is these residents, like what the hell is going to happen to me? What was that experience like? I imagine you see it in the range of emotions. There's an emotional thing that happens to you, but then there's a practical, like, what the hell am I going to do?
Yeah, so you pretty quickly have, you have this sadness and worry, like I'm not going to be able to be at my institution that I plan to train at. And you suddenly are thrown back in the role kind of being that fourth year med student of saying, am I good enough? Will I be able to match somewhere? Will I be able to get somewhere? You start feeling a little bit unsure of your qualifications, even though you were qualified for a spot, in a lot of cases, a categorical spot. You were qualified to be somewhere for the entire length of your training. And
you matched.
Yeah, you matched. And that was a contract.
Yeah.
That was a contract that you entered into. And they guaranteed you that they would train you. And now they're telling you that, they do guarantee that they're going to train you, but they're not guaranteeing that it's going to be in Philly. And they're not going to guarantee you it's going to be in your specialty. And they're not really going to guarantee you anything at all. And they can't tell you how the process works. So good luck.
Right.
And before you know it, it was a free-for-all. It was just a free-for-all. And you pretty quickly have to get your head in the game and start saying, it's me versus everybody else. Like, I'm going to get the spot where I want it, or it's going to end up going to someone else. And the unfortunate thing is that they are more than just your colleagues, but they're your friends.
Because you were there with them.
Yeah, you're people that you're there with, that you have had really formative experiences with. You've lamented over like bad decisions or mistakes that you've made. You've celebrated successes.
Yeah, we've all seen Scrubs, right?
Like,
it's just your residency.
I've never actually seen that.
All right, well, I'll lecture you on that later.
But that's what is happening, and all of a sudden it is just you versus them, even though
you're bros. You're like you're in the trenches together.
Yeah, and you don't know what the rules are. You don't know if the match has, in some ways, this positive, really strict set of rules. By this date you interview, by this date you have a list, by this date you find out where you're going to be. And it's all set up. This was should I call them, should I not call them, should I email them, should I call them again, what should I do?
Yeah.
And you're cold calling people, and then eventually you just get a call from a program director that says, I looked at your resume, I talked to you on the phone, or I interviewed you in person, and I'd like to offer you the spot, and can you tell me by Monday? Can you tell me by tonight? Can you tell me by the next hour?
What's your feeling right now? Like, that would be so trippy, because on one hand you're like, man, a bird in the hand, let's do it right now.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you're like, well, who knows what can happen?
Right, and you don't know if you agree. Is that a binding thing? Are you in trouble if you back out? What if one of your friends doesn't get a spot and you get another spot? Can you give the other spot to them? Can you find a way to make it work? There are people who have spouses, who have children, who are pregnant themselves or have pregnant spouses, who have own property, have family here. They have established a life.
Right.
And they were guaranteed to have been in this spot for a certain number of years, and they started their career here with that in mind, and it in one day got taken away from them. And not only did it get taken away from them in one day, but you're told that, like, okay, you're going to have a spot somewhere. Oh, also, by the way, we don't really know when you're going to start because there's a thing with funding and there's a thing with your licenses. And so this could push back when you could take the boards. This could push back when you would be able to be eligible for a fellowship. This can entirely push back huge milestones in your career.
Which is crazy. So for everybody, we've mentioned on this program, as this has followed, my co-host, Dr. Emi Okamoto, who is hopefully setting up shop in Cambodia right now. She's going to be a remote host from now on. We have talked about how it feels like there's this auction process, and these are the rumors that were going on, and then there was the ruling from the judge that the CEO of the company does possess the funding that accompanies your contract, which would mean like you are, as a human, literally a thing now. That you come with the money, which to me, obviously, like there are plenty of labor rights and human rights and really trippy stuff that goes along with that. It's a very bone-chilling way to think about it. But the other thing, the secondary thing that really popped in my head was that no one is in the know. You can tell when someone's in charge of something. When the executive branch of the government says, we're bombing Syria, then everybody knows what's happening. When something happens in medicine like this, it's very clear to me that no one, no government agency, no private business, no institution, no one can look me in the face and say, here are the facts of what's about to happen. Nobody knows.
That's true. Nobody knows. We had a quote-unquote town hall meeting with the ACGME that accredits all of the residency programs in the country. And they broke us down into specialty. So the groups of the ACGME that oversee certain groups of specialty, they kind of tried to tailor the meeting to us. So it was surgery and some other programs, and we met with them. And ironically, one of the people who was there told us that he could not guarantee that we wouldn't lose time, so we wouldn't either have to sacrifice vacations or push back when we are eligible to take the boards, etc. Because he couldn't tell us what the American Board of Surgery was going to say about all of this. He was the president of the American Board of Surgery 2 years ago.
Yeah, which is like...
So he should probably know the rules, or maybe he should know who the next president is that he can talk to about what their decisions would be. The boarding institutions, the ACGME, the CMS group, the hospital itself were not seemingly in any kind of communication and could not come up with what the appropriate rules were, or if there were any rules at all.
Right. So that's interesting because I heard from like my sources and people in Philly. I know a couple of residents, know a couple of MDs, and every now and then I just like reach out, and plenty of nurses as well, just to take the pulse on some things. And what I heard was that it was made clear to program directors in the area and in the general area, say as far away as maybe Erie or Robert Wood, New Jersey and Pennsylvania, that the program directors were not allowed to reach out to you directly until a certain point, which would make it like a land rush. But I also heard that people you went to med school with and people you had maybe interviewed with and friends that you knew on LinkedIn were either directed or kind of nudged, or they on their own were reaching out to residents in surgery and in medicine. And I kind of like, was that weird? What was that like?
That is 100% true. The day the hospital closed, I had some people reach out to me saying that they had contacts that they would forward along, or in some cases had a really strong lead on a spot that would be open for me. And if I wanted it, it was a possibility that I could take it. Our program directors, on the other hand, were told that we shouldn't reach out to anyone yet, and they would let us know when we should, and that if we did, we could potentially jeopardize our funding. I really truly believe that our program directors, specifically our program director, the surgery program director, I really truly believe that he looked out for our best interests the entire way through. I think that he wanted to make sure that we all landed on our feet, and the rules were so unclear, especially after speaking to the ACGME, that if that was who he was looking to for answers, they never had any in the first place. Right. So he was only looking out for our well-being, and he was giving us information as soon as he got it. So we were told don't reach out, but then at the same time, Jefferson, Cooper, other places, they made websites and they sent them out to everyone. They put them on their Twitters, on their Instagrams that said, if you're an orphaned resident, give us your name, your email address. We will have the appropriate program director reach out to you in the next 24 hours.
I participated in that on Twitter as well. I was on the Orphan Hahnemann residents tweet list, and I was just I was basically like eHarmony, just like, this is a resident, here are 5 programs that tweeted at this list, and here you go. But man, I cannot imagine being in the situation where like, this is a person who I trusted and I matched in this program, but the last time that we were in a situation where information was being passed down, it was bullshit. And now these people are talking to me. Like, I don't know who to trust. Man, what a trippy experience.
I did not know who to trust. I was not sure if especially in a situation where, the hospital closes so quickly and you had trusted all of those people around you who said, probably would not happen. And they didn't know, they didn't have the information. Or they lied, which I like to think that they did not have the information and they didn't know. And it came as a shock to everyone. And I do think that for most people, just based on the fact that a lot of people don't have jobs yet,
they would have got themselves a lifeboat.
They would have figured it out too. So I really think that a lot of people did not know, and so no one knows who you're supposed to trust. And I don't know these program directors at other programs. I don't know who they are. I don't know if they throw you a lifeline and say, hey, I think you'd be a good fit. Is that just them telling you something nice because you're in a tough spot? Is that that you should, are you supposed to sell yourself? Should you push for it? It was very hard to tell what to do. So, I mean, I was fortunate to have been offered a spot at a place that I really was interested in, honestly. I honestly was interested in Cooper, and I was interested in Cooper in the original match. And so I was lucky to have had, I thought, very clear communication from them and been able to accept a spot.
And it's
with little pressure as well.
Yeah, what a great situation. I know that Cooper, they're expanding in terms of they're making more physical outpatient clinics. They're building new buildings. There seems to be expansion. I know that the general surgery residency program, it was expanding naturally anyway. They had gotten approval for funding, so it seemed like this was kind of very serendipitous that it was going to be good for. And I think there were more than one of you from Hahnemann in different years that ended up going to Cooper. Is that right?
That's true. There's an intern, a 2. A research resident, and me, a clinical 3.
So there you are in the airport. See how I jumped? Man, good at this. I'm not going to lie to you. So you're in the airport, and now you're feeling good because you got your spot, and your friend got married, and so everybody gets the feels, and you're in the airport, and you're like, I'm going to relax, and so you get this emotion out. You said you went through the 5 stages of grief, and you told me that you wrote this eulogy on your phone.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, so I wrote it all on my phone while I was sitting there, and I was thinking about it all, and I got home, put it in a Word document, sent it to a couple people, and said, is this reasonable, or am I insane for thinking I should send this out? And then I reached out to someone I know at WHYY, and I said that I had written this thing, and if she was interested in reading it, she could, and no pressure. And she said, sure, send it her way.
I mourn the loss of this hospital as I would a lifelong friend. Rest in power, Hahnemann University Hospital. So how did you feel when you wrote that? You sent it out and very triumphantly, fine, if you want it, take it. If you don't, whatever. I don't need you.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, I just thought that at that point I had to stop being sad about the hospital closing.
It's therapy.
I was just, and it was the same thing every day for weeks. We'd show up, the hospital was empty.
No resources.
There's and really truly empty. We went from 200 inpatients to very suddenly 14 inpatients to very suddenly 3, then none, but really nothing. At one point, we were told that if you suspected a very serious thing like a stroke, a heart attack, somebody was crashing, that you were going to call 911 from inside the hospital. So, we weren't accepting traumas. We weren't, we didn't have any resources. We didn't have the resources to operate. We had nothing. And you were showing up every day because you don't know what else to do.
What did you do when you got there?
I painted the windows, walked around, found all of the roofs, tried to hustle for other people who didn't have spots, tried to get paperwork together for people who, if you did have a spot, for your licensing or whatever else the GME needed.
And how long was this kind of situation?
We knew before we started the new year for July 1, so we knew at the end of June. So I'd say the first week of July, we probably had a little bit of inpatient work to do. And then for the entire rest of July, we had nothing.
That's crazy.
And we just waited. We went to protests. We occasionally went
Bernie
to
was
clinic
here.
hours. Yeah, Bernie was here.
Yeah.
We went to clinic hours if there was stuff going on, but there was nothing happening, and you would walk around. That was what made it sad, is that you would go to this place where it was always so busy, and you had so much stuff to do, and you remembered all these like really important moments, and you'd walk around and it was just absolutely empty.
It's weird. It's
just absolutely empty.
Really soul crushing.
Yeah, and you see, it's one thing when you walk into a room where you had a really touching experience with a patient. You walk in that room and there's a new patient there, and there's new stuff there, and there's a new nurse there.
Oh, that's true. Every room had a last patient ever. That's
yeah,
crazy.
But every room had like a last patient ever. But there are times but when you had a patient there and it was a lot of memories, but now there are new patients that put new memories in that room.
Sure.
And it stops being so much. And then in this case, you would walk past these rooms where you had very important moments, either clinically or personally, and they were empty, and the monitors were torn off the walls, and the phones were pulled out of the walls, and they maybe piled just IV poles in there, and it felt like almost like disrespectful to the memories of what had happened in those rooms.
And that was in your 5 years. And as you mentioned earlier, it's like 150 years in the epicenter of North American medicine.
Right. So all of those things that have happened in that building, all of those things, and they're all just kind of going to go away. So everyone kind of tried to be as cheerful as possible. Everyone was still really sad. It was hard to not be sad with nothing to do, nothing to distract you with. So all of the window paintings and signs, none of that was organized.
Yeah, I imagine you get there and you're like, hey, what are we going to do today? Let's figure something out.
Yeah, none of that was organized. It all started, someone taped up a little sign that said goodbye on one of the windows. A really small sign, and someone saw it, and it was like so sad. And then there were a couple more signs, and then before you knew it, it just became this whole thing. They've taken most of the signs down now,
which makes sense. I mean, they're gonna someone owns the building, and they're gonna do something with it. Yeah, but
the surgery sign was painted on the windows, so they're going to have to.
Yeah, it's a typical surgery one-upping medicine mic drop. If I've ever
they're
heard
going to have to work a little bit harder to get that sign going.
It's the best rivalry in sports: surgery versus medicine.
Yeah.
There will be pictures to the artwork at Hahnemann University Hospital in the podcast notes, because a lot of people who are in medicine in Philly tweeted and Instagram posted when they run or like we're driving by it or whatever. It's like, oh man, and it does hit hard, because this is a place with great medical institutions, as you mentioned, Jefferson and Hahnemann, and the Philadelphia, the Pennsylvania Hospital, great paintings and stuff. But Hahnemann was that was the OG for sure. Really intense. I think it must have been a really beautiful last week or two where everyone's kind of like weirdly sad happy, where you're kind of doing this fun thing together, but it's just to put off the inevitable.
Yeah, everyone, and we had, I don't know how many last hurrahs. Everyone said, oh, well, someone's having a party because it's our last hurrah. Then like 2 days later, someone's having a party because it's the last hurrah. It was just an ongoing
thing. Guys,
I
graduated from high school a decade ago.
Yeah, because we just kind of couldn't let it go. And the good thing is that we're all still in touch, and we're all still, I think, going to be really close for a long time, especially having gone through this. So.
I imagine that this is going to be an asterisk on your career for probably forever. You'll have this story for a long time.
Yeah, I think it will be. And a lot of people have already asked, just what was it like? I think that you see a hospital close and you think it does impact so many people. But it eventually becomes this thing where it's just no longer there. Like, this is a terrible analogy, but like there are no Blockbuster stores anymore.
No, that's true.
And if you walked through an empty Blockbuster store that like had no DVDs in it, you would probably be like, wow, this is a weird ghost town of nothing.
Museum
it's like a, right. Yeah. But then they're just gone and you forget that they're gone. And that's kind of what this is going to be like, I think, where it's just gone and everyone's going to forget that it had ever been there at some point.
Right.
But when you have walked through it and when people have been there there are people who were still working there until like
the day
now,
that they
like
got
still
kicked.
now,
yeah, that's true.
They just put signs on the emergency room that say like closed, don't come here, don't walk in here, and there were people who were there. I mean, there are still, I'm sure, plenty of people who are support staff who still show up to work there in an absolutely empty, just
like a cathedral,
devastated building. Yeah,
just like nothness.
Just nothing.
It is wild to me, and it's also just what's incomprehensible is that like now it's going to be turned into something, and it is prime real estate in the city of Philadelphia.
Prime real estate, and
Literally.
from someone who has been on every roof that they have.
I bet it is the best in the city.
It is. It has a beautiful view from all angles. All angles.
Because you look to the north, you see the cathedrals and the churches and temple, and look to the south, and you see the skyscrapers, and you look to the west and see Old City. Or east, I mean,
so you can see the Ben Franklin, you can see City Hall, you see like everything. It's a beautiful view all around.
Man, medicine was here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dr. Lynsey Daniels, thanks so much. I think we might have you back at some point, just like rehash this, because what I'm realizing now as I'm saying this to you is you were in the airport and you had that moment where you're kind of like taping your emotions together with your buddies, putting stuff on the wall. But I doubt you've ever really fully processed this yet. This will happen over Christmas break, I'm guessing.
I'm sure there will be another really hard cry in the shower, one of those things. But I think everyone right now, most of the people that I've talked to are in like the honeymoon phase of their new institution, just thrilled to be somewhere else, because unfortunately we left Hahnemann when it was empty. If you had pulled us from it when it was active and thriving, we probably would have gone to other places and said like, hey, this isn't so much better, this isn't so great. But they pulled us when it was so sad that now it just feels it's so wonderful to be in a functioning, like active hospital with tons of people. Like, it threw me off when I walked into Cooper for the first time and there were people everywhere. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what it's supposed to be like. I forgot.
I got stuff to do today.
Yeah, I got a lot of stuff to do today.
Well, that makes a lot of sense why it's a eulogy and why it's an obituary. And I think that I hope that we've provided you a platform, because people have been really kind of following this story. A lot of people in this show is meant for a lot of burnout and empathy. And we talk about things like dating and family planning and, like lifestyle, cool hobbies, things like that. And a lot of people are nostalgic from their residency days, thinking, what would I have done if that had happened to me? So thanks for coming on and telling your story. And we'll catch you on that next cry in the shower. I'm going to ballpark it around December. Yeah,
it's probably accurate.
All right, thank you for coming on, Dr. Lynsey Daniels. You can read the obituary eulogy thing in the podcast notes.
All right, thank you.